Do you like falling from the ceiling and breaking both of your legs? Do you enjoy haunted furry costumes? And do you enjoy listening to small children asking to be let out of the basement? If so, then boy oh boy do I have a game for you. This is Ruin, a free DLC for the horror game Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, made by Scott Cawthon and Steel Wool Studios. FNAF Security Breach was on its own release fairly well received. Unfortunately, it was also a giant hive of bugs. Ruin, even though it being merely a free DLC, managed to be fairly stable. But there are some very immersive ruining bugs that are fairly common, as well as some FPS issues. The game is extremely linear, which is the total opposite of the base game, which was much more free roam. This leads to a smoother story experience, and there are more scripted events. However, a lot of them are fairly subtle and can leave you very confused. This is especially obvious early in the game, where there are a lot of small movements coupled with sound effects. Now, if you look towards the wrong side of a room, for whatever reason, for even a moment, you get a scary noise cue, but you miss why it was playing. The story builds very loosely off of the base game. The main things they have in common are the location, the animatronics, and Gregory, the main character of the base game. Much like in the base game, we get to know next to nothing about our character. Really, the only thing we get to know at the start of the game is that our name is Cassie, and that our friend Gregory needs us to come to the Ruin Pizzaplex. If you're interested in the story, there are about 3 million videos on YouTube covering the hidden lore of the franchise and the FNAF universe in general. But we do learn a bit more about the character as the game progresses, even though we are almost never told directly, and you have to look at environmental clues in the AR world to figure it out. So what's that? What's the AR world, you ask? AR stands for augmented reality, as you could probably guess, and early on in the game you're given a rabbit mask. This rabbit mask is used to see this augmented reality world, and you use it frequently to swap between that world and reality. Because in the AR world, some of the objects from the real world are gone or altered. This is often used to progress, but comes at a small cost. Sort of. When you equip the mask, there will spawn a rabbit that will hunt you down, blurring your vision and alerting animatronics of your whereabouts. Until you take the mask off, or you perish. Now, besides the rabbit mask, there are 2 other ways of progressing through the Ruined Pizzaplex: the power grid and the security nodes. The power grid is very simple. You use this switch to charge one of these blue tubes, and you need to charge all of the tubes in a way that they are all in the blue area at the same time. This is used a lot. Several doors and other electronics use this mechanic, and it unfortunately gets boring pretty fast. There are almost always the same solutions, and it's solved by simply pointing it at one of the tubes and then swapping it to the next one. They feel like something that could be substituted for just an interact button at times. However, there are 2 places where these are used very well. One is in the final act, and I won't show that, and the other one is used here. In this segment, you're being hunted whilst in the water, and you have to jump across these platforms. The door lock that you have at this point come to recognize as an easy and almost a waste of time is now suddenly placed here. This created a very nice moment of genuine fear and panic as I was scrambling to do the puzzle on time without getting caught. Now, the security nodes are the AR version of this power grid. These contain a small maze where you have to connect these duplicates and not cross the wires. They're usually very simple, are however made harder by the fact that if you do them too slowly, you risk getting caught by the rabbit, and you need to find several smaller nodes and disable them before you can even access this puzzle. Now, the graphics of the game may look a bit cartoonish, and it might be made for a younger audience. However, it still managed to capture a very scary atmosphere, and it makes the game feel a bit more unique in the horror genre compared to the usual game. The atmosphere is amazing. The rundown Pizzaplex lends itself to horror perfectly. The piles of trash that never got dealt with, the spray painted messages on the wall and pictures, all make the location feel more real. Now, most of the areas are filled with fallen debris from caved-in ceilings or withering walls, and the sounds are quiet. You can hear drippings from the water leaks and crunching as you step over rotten food and garbage bags. The AR world is the complete opposite, however. It's vibrant, glowing, and loud. The AR world almost feels alive. There are background noises of children playing, and you can hear several of the animatronics from the first game talking around you. And whilst many of the locations are only affected by the AR world in small ways, there are some parts that makes it feel much like the Upside Down from Stranger Things. It's an almost perfect mirror with horrors that shouldn't be there. For example, there is this tunnel that you can go through fairly early in the game, made of cardboard boxes and wooden panels. This is pretty standard for a normal rundown building. But then you put on the mask, and suddenly it looks like it's a fully circular, smooth tunnel, almost like a throat or a tentacle. Earlier I mentioned that there are a few major bugs. This is the first one. I've already shown you it in the intro. The way the AR mask works behind the scenes leads to this, which is one of the immersion breaking bugs. This occurs because the mask is a teleportation button. It looks like it merely alters the map, but it is in fact teleporting you to a completely different map, which doesn't make any sense, but it's really, really impressive that it works most of the time. And when this happened to me, originally, I nearly thought it was a game mechanic, because I got teleported back to where I last put on the mask. Now, I thought that the mask would move you around, sometimes, giving you a hint that you were getting your mind corrupted or losing control to the mask or something. But I was quickly disillusioned when I started falling from the ceiling and flying out of bounds. And this instead made me doubt a lot of the game's mechanics, and I started wondering if they were truly intended, or if the game was just bugged. Now, the other major one isn't really a bug, it's more of an issue with the game itself. And that's the amount of FPS drops. Now, if I were to only go over my game experience, I would have assumed that this was just due to my PC being bad. However, it seems like pretty much everyone who plays the game suffers pretty significant FPS drops when the game is loading in new segments. I think the game could have done loading screens in some places, and it sort of does sometimes. It does this, but only some of the time, which results in a lot of places being very clunky and off-putting, and it could have just been loading screens, I think. Okay, before I get to talking about the end, I need to rant. There's this one segment where you, like the rest of the game, have to find security nodes and unlock them. However, this one is above water, and some of the platforms you move across are slippery, and you can fall off. And for some reason, the entire place is really dark, and they just put holes in random places. And then they made some of the platforms, where you usually end up taking off the mask because the rabbit is on his way to catch you, that are fake. They only exist in the AR world. So I just kept falling off the map randomly, not to the actual like slipping mechanic, or while being chased by an animatronic, but just because I didn't see that there was a gap, or I didn't like realize that I was standing on fake ground because of the mask. And then what makes this even worse is that when I load the game back up from dying, it takes about a minute or two before the game loads back in. Like, luckily, there were checkpoints in this area, otherwise I might have gone, like, actually fully insane. Oh, but wait, then there are also optional jumps that you can make, but for some reason, the game only lets you sprint if you're already moving, and only some of the time. So you press the button, and nothing happens, so you go for one of these jumps, and then you just walk off the edge and go blah 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 blah. Okay, sorry, I'm done. I don't, bad memories. So, spoiler warnings for the endings. If you have any intention of playing the game, you can skip to this timestamp to skip this. Okay. Now, I truly enjoyed most of the game, up until the endings. The original Security Breach had 6 endings, where only one of the endings had an animated ending. The rest were comic book-esque, kinda half-assed endings. Ruin, however, only has half the amount of endings, so 3, and none of them have an animated cutscene, really. They're all standard in-game cutscenes, and all 3 of these endings are extremely abrupt, and I feel like they came pretty much out of nowhere. After finally getting to Gregory's location, you find out that it was in fact a fake Gregory calling out to you for help, which was pretty obvious from the start of the game, and it was only made clearer and clearer throughout it. You are given about 3 seconds to process this before the fake that you have helped through the entire game up until this point attacks you, and you have to run. You go through a minute-long chase, and then you get hit with a 30-second in-game cutscene. And none of the different endings gives you any clear indication of what happens to you or the fake Gregory. Either your elevator falls down because the real Gregory betrays you, you try to escape reality with the mask, or you watch the fake get taken out by a robotic arm. And this ending is through heavy smoke for some reason, so you can't even really tell what's happening. So, like, when I first finished the game, I didn't even believe it was over. I thought it was some kind of fake credit roll and that there would be more after. And then I realized this wasn't the case. I figured I must have just been, like, oh, I must have just gotten the bad ending. And then I went back to get the other ones, only to be just as disappointed because they were also as bad as the first one. Now, having said that, would I recommend you play? I mean, if you have the base game, absolutely. The DLC is free and it's really fun to play through for 95% of the game. Looking at you, Monty Golf segment. However, if you haven't actually bought the game yet, would I recommend you get the game just for this DLC? I'm not sure. Luckily, I don't have to be sure, because if you buy it, you also get the base game, which is a pretty good game in and of itself. It's been out for almost a year and has had most of the original bugs and problems fixed, and it's pretty fun. So yeah, I think I can safely say that I recommend buying the game. And if you're still unsure and want to see more of the game, you can check out my playthrough here. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you guys so much for watching.